Last week they were showing you with the backyard farmer garden, they were putting down those mulch and soaker hoses. Those type of cultural methods in controlling diseases in your garden is huge, especially when we look at tomato diseases. That mulch, besides providing a lot of moisture and protection for our plants, is also keeping that soil off of the leaves of our plants, which is going to spread those spores from the soil line up to those lower leaves, and then it will move and progress continuously up the plant, and soon we'll have defoliation of the plant. The soaker hoses are also great disease management because we're providing that moisture right at the base of the plant, right at those root systems, and we're not getting that rain splashing that we'll see with overhead water irrigation, which is also going to sit there and move those spores from one leaf to the next leaf, and the disease will continue to progress up the plant, which we really want to try to avoid. So just those two little cultural managements can really reduce the amount of disease you're going to see in your garden setting, or even in your landscape setting when we're looking at foliar fungal diseases affecting our plants. On these tomatoes, we're seeing the typical symptoms that we see with early blight and septoria. Early blight, the easy way to diagnose that disease is we look at the lesion. The fungus grows in rings, so you're going to see little ring patterns on that lesion. Concentric rings is what we call them, very similar to see what you see in a tree when we cut it down. That's early blight. The other one that we see is septoria, which is going to give us those small black lesions with the yellow halos. All these fungal diseases that I'm talking about always start at the bottom of the plant and are going to work their way up. So one thing we already talked about with management is mulching and soaker hoses. The other thing to look at, especially when we look at these tomatoes right here, is they're down on the ground. We want to make sure we get our cages on properly, get the tomatoes up off the soil line itself to help really reduce the amount of disease that we're seeing. If the disease continues to progress, even with these cultural practices, we can do fungicide applications. The trick with fungicide applications, you need to read the product labels very clearly to know how long after an application you can actually eat the fruit. The other thing to do, I forgot to remind everybody, if we're seeing those leaves really turning yellow and starting to discolor, pinch them off and remove them from the garden. It reduces that inoculum source, and the amount of disease will also be suppressed in the same time. Some of the most common diseases that we'll see on tomatoes every single year consist of early blight, which is a fungal disease, Septoria leaf blight, which is also another fungal disease. And those two diseases will affect the leaves primarily, giving us those nasty spots, yellowing, and defoliation of our plants during the growing season. The other two diseases that we commonly see in Nebraska is bacterial spot and bacterial speck. And with these being bacterial diseases, they act a little bit different than our fungal pathogens, but they're going to cause leaf spots. But the biggest thing that we typically see with these two diseases is they're going to affect the fruit themselves. So we're going to see spotting on that fruit, little black specks, almost look like fly specks. But all this specking is all on the outside of the tomato, so once you peel back the skin, we don't have a disease issue. And then the last disease we commonly see in tomatoes is a viral disease, and that's tomato spotted wilt virus. Once we get that fruit development setting on, the fruit, instead of being that nice red color that we're after, it's going to be blotchy. We're going to have blotches of red, yellow, and oranges on that fruit. You can still eat the fruit, it's no impact to you, but the virus can move from one tomato to the next and when we have thrips present. So we usually recommend removal of those infected plants and look at thrips using sticky traps to determine if an insecticide application is actually necessary to control the insects in your garden.